For lesson 6 homework, we're going to work on some of our similar triangle proportions. In the diagram below, triangle ABC is similar to triangle ADE. Which measurements are justified by this similarity? So this is a Regents question, and we want to talk we kind of need to plug the numbers in to be able to do it. And if I look at all the numbers, it's all AD, AB, AE, and AC. So they really work here on splitting the triangles into their big version and into their small version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to erase and everything for each of them, but I think this will help make it pretty clear. So the first one says AD is 3, AB is 6, AE is 4, and AC is 12. So if I look at that, if I look at my corresponding sides, how do I go from 3 to 6? I'm multiplying by 2. How do I go from 4 to 12? I'm multiplying by 3. And if we just look at it in fraction form, we could go 3 over 6 equals 4 over 12. And you have a couple ways to do it. You could simplify them to show that you get 1/3 and 1/2, which we know is false. Or if you cross multiply, 6 times 4 is 24, and 3 times 12 is 36. So based on all of that, you know that that is not the right answer. Now, that's a lot of work to show for each of them, and I think we can all see that we can just recognize if the multiplication works or not for some of them. For some of them, we might have to plug in, all the answer choices and actually set up the fraction. So that first one's out. For the second one, AD is 5, AB is 8, and then AE is 7, and AC is 10. So these don't have a clear pattern in it. It looks like they added 3 to each of them. And that's going to make it seem a little bit confusing, but let's see. 5 times 10 is 50. 8 times 7 is 56. Well, those don't match up, so therefore we know that that's not the right combination either. So now we're down 2 answer choices. Okay, we know both A and B are not our correct ones. In the third one, AD is 3, AB is 9, and then we have AE is 5, and AC is 10. Well, how do you go from 3 to 9? You multiply by 3. How do you go from 5 to 10? You multiply by 2. Since the scale factor is not the same, we know that that's not the right option. And our last piece now is choice D. Obviously, we know this is the right answer, but let's look at it. So AD is 2, AB is 6, AE is 5, and AC is 15. So because this is the correct one, we'll set up the fraction and we'll talk about, or the proportion, we'll set it and talk about it here. So 2 over 6 equals 5 over, 15. So now if we simplify them, we get 1/3 equals 1/3, which we know works. Or you could cross multiply. 6 times 5 is 30. 2 times 15 is 30. And we know that that setup works. So the only one that has our fraction simplified to the same or cross multiplied to the same is choice D. And that's the one with our scale factor of 3. In the second one, this is another Regents question, and it's similar to the question in class where we needed to change around our triangles. In triangle SCU, shown below, points T and O are on SU and CU respectively. Segment OT is drawn such that angle C is congruent to angle OUT. If TU is 5, TU is 4, OU is 5, and OC is 7, what's the length of ST? So the biggest problem is because they said this statement about those two angles being the same, and we can see one is on the bottom and one's on the top, we know our triangles are not facing the same direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the little triangle here, and I'm going to draw it so that it matches the shape of the big one. So I'm going to keep U the same, and I'm basically just going to flip the locations of O and T so that this way our congruent angle goes on the bottom. And what does that do? Well, that takes the 4 and the 5 and flips them as well. Now, when I redraw my bigger triangle, SCU, I need to account for the fact that the 7 and the 5 didn't move. It's still 12 on the bottom. And then for SU, I can either go x plus 4 or I'm going to call it y. I like to call them different letters because this way it makes the cross multiplication a little bit easier. I don't have to distribute or anything like that. So now if I look at my setup here, I can do 5 over y equals 4 over 12. I cross multiply, 4y equals 60. Divide both sides by 4, and I get that y is 15. So remember, that's not what we're looking for. This whole thing in the original picture was y. So if I want to get what x equals, which is st, I need to do 15 minus 4, and that gives me 11 as the final answer. So to recap, it's important that you have your angles that are congruent to each other facing the same way and in the same location, so that this way you can actually match up your proportions and set up your sides correctly.